Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to part 1 of my Dardenne brother season. And today we're going to talk about their 1996 film Promesse, or The Promise. A couple of housekeeping things first. I think in my Director C's announcement I may have suggested that the Dardennes were French. Of course they're Belgian, but their films are mostly in French. I just thought I'd want to correct that. They're already my favourite Belgian directors of all time. So again, they did short documentaries. They did 2 features before La Promesse. Falsch, which was made in 1987, and it's about a Jewish guy who left Germany in 1938. He's on a plane and he lands at an airport and he finds and talks to the 13 family members who were killed by the Nazis. That's I can't seem to find it. But it sounds wonderful. And then their second film, I'm Thinking of You, is about a man who gives up life pretty much, and his wife tries to find him and save him. Again, those 2 films I can't seem to find anywhere. Again, please let me know in the comments if you have found a physical media copy of those 2 films. Maybe one day they'll get re-released. So La Promesse, let's talk about this, from 1996. Stars Jeremy Renier as 15-year-old boy called Igor. Renier appeared in 5 Dardenne films, and it stars Olivier Gourmet as his father, or Roger, as he tells Igor to call him. And Gourmet appeared in 7 Dardenne films. As soon as I saw Gourmet, I thought I've seen this film before, but I might be thinking of Le Fil or The Sun, which I saw a long time ago, which makes sense because he's been in 7 of their films. This is, spoiler alert, an excellent film. So it tells the story of the relationship between father and son, but it just so happens that the father is involved in bringing in illegal immigrants into Belgium, to a small Belgian town, and exploiting them basically for cash. And Igor is an apprentice at a garage while working for his dad as well. The Dardennes do a good job of winning that balance, or winning that battle of, sometimes films show people doing bad things and making them scumbags, but they're so scumbaggy that you're not actually interested in them as human beings or their motivations, and you basically just don't care. But in this film you do care, even although Roger is a pretty terrible human being. His motivations are kind of in the right place. He wants to get enough money to buy a house for him and his son. Because he's an overweight guy, he wears shell suits, he has kind of thick glasses, so he's not making, millions out of this scheme. You know, he's trying to survive as well. It doesn't justify his actions, but at least from a human standpoint, we can understand why he's doing it, rather than having characters who do terrible things and you just don't care about them or why they're doing, and you're not really interested, which happens in a lot of films. So you have that distance between them because you're just not involved. Obviously, the way the Dardennes shoot, you don't have a chat. You don't really have an option but to be involved. They don't really use music. There is one scene with with karaoke, but they don't use like scores or anything like that. Certainly not in this film. And I'm sure 2 Days, One Night didn't have a score as well. I could be wrong. I'll be rewatching that at some point anyway. And again, they are on the side of realism and naturalism in film rather than, you know, over the top stylism. There's no kind of look at us, we're the directors. The way they shoot, you know, at times they know how to keep their distance to kind of show the isolation of the characters, to show that nobody's coming to help. But most of the time, they're right in there. You know, there's no beautiful framing, there's no stunning cinematography with the Dardenne films that I've seen so far. It is very get in amongst it, which means as the audience, we're very involved with what's going on. It's funny, the Promesse recently got a Criterion Blu-ray. I think Rosetta has a Criterion Blu-ray as well, and it's one of those things where I'm not sure the Dardennes films, a Blu-ray would almost make them, I don't know, too polished, and it might kind of provide a screen from what's actually going on. I don't know. Granted, I probably will pick those up anyway at some point. But back to the story. Apologies for digressing. So we have this situation where Roger is using these illegal immigrants, taking their passports, charging them rent, charging them for heating, using them to pretty much do up the house next door. He's constantly kind of exploiting them. He obviously has a boss who's a lot more well off. You know, there's a scene where the boss is getting pressure from somebody in the mayor's office, and the police want to, you know, crack down illegal immigrants, so Roger's paid to pretty much give up 4 of the immigrants. So there's a beautiful scene where they're pretty much duping 4 guys to think they're going to the States, and he takes them out to a bar and even offers them to buy them a drink, and then of course the police turn up, and it's beautifully shot because Igor's in the bathroom, so we just hear what's going on. You know, Igor obviously likes his dad. His dad is doing everything for him. He's given him an identical tattoo. He buys him the same ring that he has. You know, he wants him to follow in his footsteps. But one day, the building inspectors come up, or inspectors to track down illegal immigrants, turn up, and one of the workers, Amadou, is up a ladder. Again, we don't see it, but he falls off the ladder, and it looks as though he's cut his femoral artery or something, so he's kind of bleeding out. Obviously, Igor wants to help him, but the father discovers it, and obviously, you know, Igor's asked him to take him to the hospital. The father doesn't want to do that because that's just going to lead to more problems and more questions. So they pretty much let him die, and bury him in cement on the building site. Um, then obviously his wife and kid, Asita is his wife, who we see at the start of the film being brought to Amadou. So she's obviously left alone, and she's desperate to find her husband and find out what happened to him, strangely enough. So the rest of the film, and that's probably where I'll leave any plot developments. So the rest of the film is really Asita trying to find out what happened to her husband, threatening to go to the police, and Roger and Igor trying to figure out ways of keeping her quiet or trying to get her out of the picture, essentially. And at some point, Igor needs to make a moral decision on what to do, because as the title of the film, he has made a promise to Amadou that he would make sure his wife and kid are looked after. So even as a 15-year-old boy who's obviously older in years of experience compared to his actual age, he has to make that decision. Of the few Dardenne films that I have seen, it's fairly simple to see what they're about, as far as they're about stories that concern characters who have moral decisions to make and the consequences of those decisions, and how they deal with that and how they come to terms with that. I mean, I think they do a very clever thing at the start of the film. We see Igor working in the garage, and a pensioner comes with a problem with the car, and he fixes it, but she's going to pay him and she seems to have lost her purse, and he's like, oh well, you just picked up your pension, maybe you left it when you picked up your pension. So she drives off, and then we cut to him taking the money out of her purse and burying the purse in the back garden. So it's already set up that he has been trained or indoctrinated by his dad of how to grift and how to get money when he can. So he's just being trained by this guy, his father. So you already kind of know at the start that morally he doesn't have a problem with stealing money from an old lady. But at some point, perhaps because of his promise, at some point the morality or that choice, whether to stand up for that promise or whether to honour his father, go with his father's wishes, there's that crux. Again, in 2 Days One Night, it's the moral choice of workers taking a bonus, but a colleague who's been off sick will lose her job, or not taking your bonus, helping your own family out, and your colleague will get her job back. So again, it's moral choices, the consequences of those choices, but the Dardennes do a great job of showing you what's involved in those moral choices and the background of those moral choices. It's so far the two. I have seen Le Fil, The Sun, but it was a long time ago, so I'm just going on those two films that I've seen so far. It's not a simplistic view of, oh, this is your moral choice and this is going to be easy and it's straightforward. It's more complicated than that, which is just the same as real life, because we all have choices to make, and generally those kind of choices aren't easy. You generally think about them for days and weeks before you do something. Well, at least I do anyway. It's a wonderful film. There's lovely little details. Like Igor has fairly bad teeth, because again you do get the feeling that this area is neglected. Again, the Dardennes are showing people that again other filmmakers don't really bother about. They're kind of focused on stories of kind of generally um, poor or working poor people trying to make ends meet, and then they're added with these moral choices and consequences to deal with as well. Um, but Igor and his teeth, he actually Tipexes his teeth to make them look whiter. It's lovely little details like that. Um, it's full of really good stuff. Like at one point, Igor annoys Roger, so Roger like beats him up. But then when he calms down, he like offers to finish the tattoo, and then he ends up like tickling him, and it's back to that father and son kind of innocent relationship compared with the relationship that they're actually in, as far as exploiting illegal immigrants and taking money from them. But it's beautifully done. It's a 90-minute film, but it feels longer, but in a good way, not in a bad way. Because again, like I said earlier, the way the Dardennes shoot, you can't help but be involved because they're very intimate. They do like handheld. There's no. Occasionally they will do a medium to long shot, which again just accentuates distance and isolation of the characters. But they don't do amazing stylistic flourishes. They're not interested in going, look, we're directors, like some directors do. It's just a wonderful film. Again, it's honest, it's truthful. Asita has chickens and a sheep, and I'm constantly worried throughout the whole film. It's like something bad's going to happen to the sheep. But I'll leave that spoiler free. Yeah, again, because back to the realism versus stylism, because the actors, well, at the time weren't well known, that feeds into the more realism, the more kind of naturalistic approach that they have. Rennie, who plays Igor, is in 5 films by the Dardennes, like I said, but he was also in Bruges, Brotherhood of the Wolf, Atonement. Brad Gourmet has went on, I think he's got over like 100 credits to his name. But again, that's just my ignorance of that era in European cinema, that the actors in the film, you're not familiar with them. So again, that realism, that naturalism, it's just kind of, that just increases that. It's a wonderful film. I didn't want to give the first film that I did of the Dardennes 5 out of 5, but I did. There's actually a couple of moments later in the film that are quite moving. Like I said, it's an honest film, so it's perhaps not for everybody. It is kind of unflinching, but I think to get to the truth, you have to be. It's that balance again of being moving without being sentimental, but because of the unflinching manner that they shoot it in, and because, again, certainly in this film, you can let me know in the comments for the later films, there's no score, so there's no moments where other filmmakers would put like soaring music or tense music, or again, and that increases your involvement because you're in it with those characters, and you don't have distractions of showy technique or a soaring score. Again, I love pure stylists. I love people that use amazing scores. You know, cinema is such a wonderful potpourri. You know, you can do it 100 different ways. And the Dardennes go down that naturalistic, realistic route, even though it's not realistic, it's still a film, there's still actors. But you know what I mean? It's less showy, it's much more about the characters and drawing you into that story. And it's just absolutely wonderful. So let me know what you think of La Promesse, or The Promise. Let me know if you have the Criterion Blu-ray and whether it's all bright and shiny. Yeah, and hopefully you'll join me for part 2 of the Dardennes. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much for the reaction to the Dardenne announcement, and hopefully you'll join me for part 2. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films saying farewell.